Eric, for more on this now, let's bring in Walid Phares. He's Fox News Middle East and Terrorism Analyst and author of The Lost Spring. Walid, thanks for being here. Just listening to John Huddy's report, also adding to that, Saudi diplomats have been evacuated from the Saudi embassy in Tehran. I mean, is all hell breaking loose? What does this all mean?
This is basically the ultimate explosion of what was a conflict going on for the last 3 to 4 years. The Saudis were battling an insurrection in Yemen, which was backed by the Iranian regime. Pro-Saudi and pro-Sunni forces, if you want, in Syria and Iraq were also battling two regimes allies to Iran, in addition to Hezbollah. So this whole war between the two blocs was going on. The only difference is that Saudi and Iran were not at each other's throats yet. Now it seems that it is happening, unfortunately. And this incident, the execution of detainees inside Saudi Arabia and the response by burning the embassy, the Saudi embassy in Iran and the consulate, is probably the beginning, a prelude.
So, I mean, but neither country wants this to escalate to some sort of war, right? I mean, and also you mentioned, Walid, those sectarian groups. How far might they take this?
I think the Saudis do not want a direct conflict with the Iranians, but they want to undermine Iranian influence in their neighborhoods. That would be in Yemen and in Iraq and in Syria, but indirectly, they're not sending the Saudi army. The difference is that the Iranians are sending the Iranian army, the Pasdaran, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon. They're trying to do so in Yemen. So the bottom line is Iran feels to be on the aggressive side, but also does not want to engage directly with the Saudis, so they would use terrorism or insurrection. The Saudis want to cut off this attempt by the Iranians by threatening that they will use force against the Iranians if they continue.
So does this put the U.S. in a tough spot? I mean, apparently the White House is still negotiating final details of the nuclear deal with Iran, Saudi Arabia, a UN ally. I mean, how involved at this point should the U.S. get?
It is a complex situation and a very difficult one. It's going to be very difficult and challenging for the administration for the following reason. Saudi Arabia and its allies, the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, are direct allies, direct strategic allies to the United States, though the U.S. has always criticized some aspects of breaching human rights that exist. But as countries, they are allies. Iran is not an ally, but the administration has just cut a deal with the Iranian regime. So, in principle, if Saudi is aggressed by Iran, Washington should be with Saudi. But I don't think it's going to be the situation with the administration engaged now in making sure that the deal will be cut. So it's a very difficult situation.
Let me clarify. Who did you say should be with the Saudis?
The United States should be formally with the Saudis because they are our partners.
Yeah.
But the Iranians now are signing an agreement.
No, I understand all of that. I want to make sure. For some reason, I thought I heard you say another country, so I wanted to clarify that. But you're right. Yes, of course, it's the U.S. Let me go here now because you touched on those sectarian groups you mentioned. I mean, what does this mean for, the war against terrorism? I mean, does what's playing out here signal support of terrorism by either of these countries?
It is going to be a little bit challenging in the sense of the campaign against ISIS, because Saudi and its allies have formed this alliance against ISIS. Now, we need to partner with them to have their troops, who are Sunni, assisting us against ISIS in Syria and Iraq. Who is going to block that? The Iranian regime. The Iranian regime do not want Arab Sunnis moving into Sunni areas, because if you look at the map, they will be cutting the tie between Iran and Syria. It's a very simple map. If Iran is not in charge of the areas where ISIS will be cleared from, then the Saudis and their allies will be. And that would be a major setback for the Iranians. That's why they're doing this.
I mean, and this is the largest mass execution carried out by Saudi Arabia in more than 30 years. I mean, so why now?
It's the single largest group of people executed by the Saudi authorities, for sure. But if you compare with the Iranians, they have been executing maybe 10 times more, but every month on those cranes. Why now? The Saudis are sending a message, in fact, not just to their own opposition. And of course, this could be criticized at the Council of Human Rights and everywhere else. But they're sending a message to the Iranians. They're trying to tell them, do not interfere in our domestic affairs and try to create a sort of intifada or uprising in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia. That's the reality of why the Saudis have been so determined and brutal in this case.
In wrapping up, as much of a hot potato as this is right now as we speak, is there any way to de-escalate this situation in the coming weeks quickly?
the only force on earth that is capable of doing so is the United States. It's the administration. They need to put a pressure on the Iranians to de-escalate. They need to put pressure on the Saudis to de-escalate.
Will they?
At the same time, they need to do something. I don't think so, unfortunately.
I have to leave it there. Walid Phares, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.